Bom dia, colegas. Estamos aqui em Moscou, transmitido direto do escritório da Apex Brasil Eurásia, aqui em Moscou. Hoje, nessa situação tão difícil que estamos vivendo no mundo todo, o nosso escritório, mais uma vez, lança um projeto que aproveita essa situação, é o formato de webinários. Mais do que isso, o tópico da nossa conversa de hoje é a indústria de videogames, que tradicionalmente aproveita situações de crise e por isso acreditamos que todo mundo vai usufruir dessa conversa de hoje. Eu tenho o grande prazer de apresentar para vocês o nosso speaker de hoje, que é Alisher Yakubov, produtor executivo da Mail.ru Games Ventures, o fundo de investimentos do gigante digital russo Mail.ru. Alguns de vocês podem reconhecê-lo do ano passado, porque ele fez parte da delegação russa ao Big Festival 2019. Isso é muito bom porque ele já conheceu a indústria brasileira, conheceu vocês e já pode imaginar mais ou menos o que o Brasil tem, o que o Brasil demanda nesse setor. Então, tenho o prazer de passar a palavra para ele. Vamos conversar em inglês com ele. Se vocês quiserem, podem deixar perguntas aqui no chat do YouTube. Eu vou encaminhar para ele no final do webinar. Então, dear Alisher, thank you for coming, for agreeing to have this little talk with our Brazilian friends and partners. So let's speak about the Russian market.
Thank you, Arsene, for inviting. I'm really glad that I'm here and that I can talk to you a little bit about the Russian market. I didn't understand anything that you were talking about like a couple of minutes ago. I did understand the crisis, and I wanted to say something about this before I start. This is a very difficult time for everyone, but in terms of business for game developers, this is an opportunity because a lot of people that are right now trapped in their homes as a quarantine, this is our opportunity to make them feel better, feel close to each other, and let's help the world as much as we can. So I would like to talk about the Russian-speaking market a little bit and to give you some introduction about what it is and what you can expect from it. In terms of the market itself, it says to be growing for the last 5 years, and this is a really big market in terms of the people, in terms of players. But unfortunately, in terms of revenues, this is not the top country that you might want to target your game to, just because historically, speaking of the PC and consoles, for example, a lot of Russian-speaking countries, Russian-speaking players, they were pirating the content, and they're feeling that the content should be free. And this is a problem, and this is fixing with time and becomes better and better, but still the market is still not comparable to US or to Chinese market or any European market, if we will take not only one country, but the back of the countries, let's say. So if you would, Russian market is a good way to approach if you have a success on other markets and you want to expand to other territories and get additional revenues. This is a good way to do so. So of course, Russian market would also require localization because people are mostly Russian speaking. They know different languages, but probably not 100% of them. So it would be a good idea to do Russian localization. And if you would do so, then you would cover not only Russia itself, but also all of the CIS region. like Armenia and Azerbaijan, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and other countries that are also Russian-speaking. So if you're doing this localization, make sure that you would also release or do something. You can also do something with these countries too. In terms of the players, on the big games like PC and consoles, the most Russian players are fancying the MMORPGs. This is like classical World of Warcraft. This is like Lineage and etc. So our players are in the middle between Europe, US, and Asian markets. So they play a little bit of both. Of course, on the mobile market, as in the whole world, hyper casual is a trend in Russia too. So a lot of people that are fond of not paying anything, they really like this monetization model, and they like the short sessions. So yeah, this is also growing. There is also some stats of Russian players. They're really playing a lot. So 60%, according to the PricewaterhouseCoopers data, are playing games. These are not only PC and consoles. These are also mobile and other platforms that might be like social networks, for example. Speaking about which, in Russia, we actually deliver the content using mostly the same instruments as the whole world. For the mobile, it's App Store, Google Play. There are different worldwide stores that we also use, and some stores that are local, but they are not really popular. So once again, they might be a good addition, but not the main platform that you want to be targeting for. But speaking about social networks, for example, there are two major social networks, Russian, are VKontakte and Odnoklassniki. They're both owned by Mail.ru, and mainly they cover 99% of the Russian internet. So there is also Facebook here, where part of the new generation is also presented. You can reach this auditory by different ad platforms, like both all the social networks, the Russian. They use one ad platform called My Target. There is a link on the presentation, so you can come by and check. And the Russian-speaking auditory can also be targeted through Facebook. So this is pretty standard for different territories. In terms of PC, Steam is, of course, the leader here because, they have a lot of games. Obviously, they have a lot of strength on this territory too. So, releasing your game on Steam may also cover Russian market. There are also different other PC stores that are less major, let's say, with like Games Mail.ru, you can distribute there, like Buka's shop, like there is a big offline shop that goes digital. It's Dina's Interest, so all the links are here. So you can probably reach these guys to figure out like how you may release on Russian territory the game. In terms of the developers, actually, Russia is quite huge about the game development community. As you can see, there are a lot of titles that were made in Russia, that were made by Russian-speaking people and countries. They usually work closely with each other. So, for example, like Hustle Castle, this is Studio Nord in St. Petersburg. War Robots, they are from Moscow. Warface, also Moscow guys. The World of Tanks, they're from Minsk, Belarus. Cut the Rope, Homescapes, Guns of Boom. These are all games that were made in Russia. Also the G5, Kama Games, and PlayerX, and Zeptalab. These are also studios that were created in Russia and that are doing content in Russia. And in terms of the development, this is quite experienced market. And this leads to a lot of services for all of these developers that might be reached and used. Like you can find services that allow AAA production, that allow like help casual production or hardcore, any platform that you might want to think about, but also some specific stuff that you probably need while you're developing a game, but it's might be cheaper than European and might be sometimes better because, for example, Russian market is has a lot of experience in casual, in free-to-play. So there are a lot of services that you might use even from another country, like playtests from real players, QA on real devices, on the big parks. Once again, Russia is quite cheap in terms of burn rate, and these services might be cheaper than in other developed, let's say, countries in terms of game development. Also, you can, there is a link. This is one of our MRGV executive producers, Dima Filatov. He made a small website, absolutely free for everyone, where you can search for vendors that have up-to-date contacts and have up-to-date URLs for their websites and etc. They're live. You can reach them. There is some kind of description, absolutely for free. This is just for the community to be closer to each other and be able to know who can they approach if they have some kind of problems. There is a pretty handy search there for the meta text, so just give it a look. It has not only Russian CIS companies there are also European countries, but most of them, they're Russian speaking, just because he started from them. So, and in terms of publishing and investors, actually, I was really thinking about how can I talk about this, and from my point of view, the publishing model for mobile, which I'm more experienced and that I can talk to, is a little bit outdated, and I couldn't really recommend. I could recommend a lot of publishers, but I would recommend for any new studio to try to publish their game on their own, especially when all of the knowledge, all of the expertise is there in the market. So I'm representing Mail.ru Games Ventures. This is an investment fund that helps developers to create their games, to publish their games, and as an ecosystem, it unites from like right now 27 studios. And we've just several months ago signed with one Brazilian studio, so we're ready to reach a new region, new country, and what can we offer is an ecosystem, is an expertise, marketing budgets, production budgets, whatever you need. What we would need from you is a great team, great ideas, and great games to help everyone achieve their goals and ideas. So I would like to end this sneak peek of Russian development market, I would say. So if there are any questions that I didn't cover, you're free to ask me right now through the YouTube channel. Can you help me with this, please?
As of now, we don't have any real questions in the chat. So the guys are discussing echo, if there is an echo in the sound. So let's turn to the questions that we have collected before during the initial stage of registration. So Alisher, what can you tell us about major events, industrial events in Russia? What do you think? Well, without paying attention to the current situation, if there was no problems, what events would you recommend for the Brazilian producers to.
Yeah, unfortunately, due to coronavirus, most of the events were cancelled, but we have international events like Winter Nights, White Nights, sorry. They're doing the conference several times a year. One time in St. Petersburg in summer when there are white nights that you can experience there if you have never been, and also talk to the game development guys and see some opportunities to work to each other. There is a DevGam, an event that you might be interested in, because this is more of a, if White Nights is more of a business conference where you can discuss the business terms and etc. The DevGam has also the development side. It also has the business part, of course, but it also has more in-depth of a development of how we can create some different stuff. There are always like Unity or Unreal Engine specialists that you can approach and ask directly.
So it's more like B2B kind of.
This is a B2B event. If you would talk about the B2C events, then there is an Igramir, which is once a year. This is like huge event for just players and developers for players, so where they can showcase their products and etc. Yeah, I have no idea what would be next year and how this situation would evolve. So I hope everyone would survive successfully and all of the events would continue once it would be ready. So yeah, this would be the major ones.
We have received a couple of questions here in the chat. What do you think about the VR sector, VR games, especially in light of what you talked earlier, this Half-Life Alyx premiere? Is there anything special about the Russian market in terms of VR?
Actually, nothing special. As in terms of VR, this is in worldwide. This is more or less the same as we see. Everyone is very excited about VR, but there are no real market that allows to do the B2C business that will provide content to players. All of the helmets have their flaws. I really hope that there will be a helmet or some device that will be mass market, or at least as widespread as consoles are right now, that it would be viable to do content on this as a platform. But right now, from VR perspective, I know that there are several companies that are quite successful, that are doing their VR quests, like an offline events, and this type of business might be successful and they really need content and etc. But I do not have the numbers so that I can comment on. In Russia, this is not better than in US, let's say, just because all of the helmets are more or less limited availability, and only early adopters and game developers really have the enthusiasm to go and buy and reach this VR helmet that is not available on the market. Officially, at least.
Yes, I see. Well, there was a question about the greatest telecommunication companies.
Okay.
How do they participate in the game industry?
Well, there are actually four maybe major cellular networks. This is Beeline, Megafon, MTS, and Tele2. This is a new one, and actually they're not providing a lot of content. They're trying to do something with pre-distributed games on the phones that they're selling. But actually, this, in terms of in business terms, this might be a good addition, but this isn't something that you can build your business model on. So more or less they are providing the internet, quite good, speaking frankly, and quite cheap. And in terms of cellular network, Russia is really good covered. If we would compare it even to the Europe, sometimes it's even better than in Europe.
And cheaper,
and definitely cheaper. So yeah, but the mobile networks, they're not really participating in the life of game development at any point.
Okay. There was a question also about esports. Can you tell us about what title is the most played in this segment?
Actually, once again, this is more or less like worldwide, because our esports leagues, they're like people that are doing esports here in Russia. They are participating in the international esports leagues, and which are presented in Europe, in US, in Asia, and etc. So this is we have quite really great cybersport sports teams, and they're doing just usual League of Legends, strategies like StarCraft, Warcraft. All of the major esports games are played also on the same level in the here in the like everywhere. There is no additional or some other kind of Russian game or Russian specific genre that they play.
Okay.
Counter-Strike, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brings memories. And what do you think about sound designs, music composition for games? If a studio wants to develop a game, how would it approach the question of soundtrack for the game here in Russia?
Yeah, this is actually not a problem because we have a lot of musicians that converted to gaming industry, and they're doing sounds for gaming industry for quite a while. They can do orchestra, they can do their own synthesized music, they can do SFX of all kinds, etc. And actually there are a lot of outsourcers that would be able to quite cheap do all of the work. You can find most of them in the vendors list, and usually all of their little sense of doing sound internally in your company. This is why even big companies, well, depending on their decisions, but most of the big companies, they also use sound design as an outsource. So they're really pretty bunch of quite good sound designers and sound design studios there, which are quite cheap, once again.
Okay, thank you. Generally, our Brazilian friends, they feel a little bit insecure about the governmental barriers that Russia has in other industries. So the question is there any type of special certification or approval for a game being published in Russia?
No, it's not like in China. You do not need an ISBN or something in order to be released in Russia. You just, well, this is, once again, we're using the same tools as all of the other world in terms of mobile, like App Store, Google Play, in terms of PC and consoles, distribution through Sony and Steam and etc. They're more or less the same rules. There is nothing special that you should do other than releasing on like on other territory or like in US. The platform itself would like sometimes like PEGI rating or something. This is the same institution, the same PEGI certification centers and etc. So there is no like additional steps that you need to do other than localization, which is optional. So this is not a mandatory if you want to release on Russia, but it's a good plus just because people, well, they do not know English really good.
So if a team wants to make a game and they decide not to work on their own game, but they choose to outsource for some other foreign publisher, for foreign game studio, um, do we have any perception of the figures of this market? I mean, external development, because there is, well, I don't think that there is some agency or some government institution that counts how many people work for American studios or something like that. It's not. It's not. I think it's difficult to count.
Yeah, it is really difficult because, the question about territory and the risk about the territory, this is a thing that every game developer should think about, not only in Russia, but in Brazil or in any other territory, because the distribution model for, at least for current games, is worldwide, more or less. And this means that there are risks on different territories. From the government side, um, there are not, Russian companies, Russian game development companies, when they create their company, they're of course trying to be the most effective as a company as they might be, despite that all of the people are working on some kind of territory like Russian. So the lawyer or jurisdiction structure could be any type, holding your IPs and holding your revenues secure from all of the different political and country questions, because it always is the same, like politicians argue with each other, and game development is more or less outside the politics. So they're trying to survive more than they do not cover themselves by one region. So they have to keep this in mind every time.
Is it frequent when a studio makes its own games and at the same time works for a great foreign, for example, for Ubisoft or something?
Yeah,
Is it common?
It's quite common. Actually, this is the way that a lot of Russian game developers worked for quite a while. They were working for other studios, our big major companies, US and Europe, like Electronic Arts, THQ, Ubisoft, and etc. So all of them have, well, not all of them, most of them have some kind of history working with these huge guys. And the only way how you can do your own project is and keep your company alive is to get somewhere this money. So this allows a lot of developers to be in balance and to create their own something, right? Because of the help. Yeah. So this is a quite common tactics, I would say.
So of course, it depends. We don't hear much about it because there is an NDA that prevents. Yeah. We don't know if this studio works for Ubisoft or Electronic Arts. Yeah. Because they are not allowed to.
That's true. Actually, a lot of studios are really not allowed to tell that they're working for someone. Actually, there are several major companies that like to restrict this. This is not really a big problem because, if you're doing your own project, you're getting the experience, you're getting all of the knowledge to be able to do your own product better. So, okay, you cannot credit yourself by your name, but still you get all of the stuff that you need for the future success.
And speaking about the games that are popular in our market, I mean the genres. What you've already told us about MMORPGs, but in general, what type of mobile games are popular? What Match 3? What type of hyper casual games?
I actually do not have the research numbers right here with me, but really the popularity is a matter of downloads. I'm more of a revenue guy, the one for the money, because popularity usually doesn't mean that this is a success. And once again, Russian territory is quite famous for piracy, and for example, this is really tough to calculate. For example, for the premium or not a free-to-play game, how many people were really engaged and how many losses were about because of the piracy. So this is really a tough question. And speaking about the genres, well, I would suggest the ones that have some kind of client server side to be able to get rid as much as you can from the piracy transactions or like piracy actions in your game. So I cannot comment on the genres right now, sorry.
Yeah, I see, it's okay. And what do you think about HTML5 games, browser games? Is there any distinction? Is there are they on the rise now? How do they compare with the mobile segment?
They're doing nothing compared to mobile segment, just because this is still like this is like a VR, right? It is still on the rise. Everyone is talking about it. All of the social networks want to get content for their networks, and I hope that this might work one day. But from right now, what we can see from the Facebook experiments, from the experiments with HTML5 on our own social platforms, this is a good thing for like if you're a big web PC social network game where you can socialize a lot and you can hold long-term retention because people are communicating with each other, they're doing clans and etc. This is a lot easier to do in social networks rather than in mobile, because on social networks you have all the data already, but on mobile you need to accept the policy, like connect to Facebook and etc. So this is a good segment for some developers, but I cannot say that this is rising or it has great opportunities ahead, right? So I would suggest to think about maybe some kind of other ways to proceed with HTML5 or web.
And the setting of the game, how important is it for the Russian players in your perception? If the game is set in Soviet Russia, for example, or in the Russia of the future, the setting of the game being Russia, does it, in your opinion, does it influence the demand for the game?
Well, I would say that it's a tough question, right? Because the setting itself, it might be, I don't know, showing something bad for USSR. It might show some good aspects of USSR. It really depends on the game and how you approach and show it to user. This is kind of tricky to answer right ahead from the top. I would say that it might do some influence because of the Russian market, and it's very it's still the auditory, the audience still remembers the previous years, and they understand that this is something maybe close to their hearts or something. But once again, I would see that there is a huge risk that this might be interesting only for USSR region and not for worldwide, which would really narrow down the revenues and the potential of the project. So if this is something that is worldwide, talking about USSR and more or less worldwide, so anyone could understand this, then this seems to be fine. But if only like ex-USSR players would be able to play it and would be able to understand it, that seems to be quite a big risk.
But the recent success of the series Chernobyl can prove that this setting can be really interesting for the worldwide audience.
It might be. I'm not saying. Yeah, it really depends. It's really tough to once again tell out of the box, right? So I was just to do marketing tests. Once again, there are a lot of services that allows this, and to figure out how the players would approach it. Depending on the platform, and if this is mobile, it's a lot easier. If this is PC, it's also doable. It just like it would allow the developers beforehand to understand: are they doing the right thing? Are they going the right way? So this is definitely what I would recommend before moving forward. And testing it on different places like US, Europe, Russia, and see what's the difference, how the players in different regions react on this, and what do they say.
Okay. And speaking about games that bring the most revenue, in your experience, mobile segment, can you name the most profitable games, maybe worldwide, or if you have these figures in mind in the Russian market?
You mean the developers that did the most profitable games, or
titles?
The titles? Yeah, sure. The most easiest is the Playrix. Everyone knows them. They're big. They're big. They have homescapes, gardenscapes, township, fishdom. These are their games, and also the developers that I was showing on the here. The major titles like Hustle Castle. This is one of the worldwide great performing games. War Robots, once again, great performing. Cut the Rope, very cute Om that everyone plays, and these are also Russian developers. So yeah, if this answers your question.
Yes, of course. But we have to point out that not
Russian
all of
speaking.
them. Yes, that not all of them Russian registered studios.
No, they're not. They're not. Actually, they're in different regions registered. But the developers, the people that are doing this company, they are situated in Russian or CIS territory.
In terms of your experience with Brazilian studios, this fact that some of the Russian studios register their headquarters in Europe, how do you think, what influenced this decision? Do Brazilian studios have the same incentive to move their headquarters to Cyprus, for example, as the Russians, or there is a specificity in the Russian market that makes developers do this?
Well, speaking frankly, there are lawyer and taxation reasons for this. So there are some jurisdiction risks to hold the IP in Russia, and there are some taxation additional risks that would require bigger LTVs in order to game to perform, and in order to optimize all of these revenue flows that are worldwide, coming from worldwide, not only from Russia. This requires optimization in terms of worldwide jurisdiction, because if the developer would be doing only his product for Russian market, then it would be absolutely, it would make absolute sense to keep all of the stuff in Russia. But since we're doing a worldwide projects, then we need to optimize it using the worldwide. So Brazilian market, as we have researched, has also some both lawyer and taxation issues like Russian market does, but There are absolutely official ways to optimize this stuff. And once again, depending on the company and the CEO and their decision and how they look at this, if they want to get the maximum optimization, then of course they have to move out their structure somehow. But if they're more of a like how say they want to stay in their region, then they would do it everything there. So this is the choice for everyone. Are they going to accept these risks and to accept these taxes, or they want to optimize?
I see. I think we have time left for one ultimate question, and it's a very good question that we didn't touch about payment methods. What are the most used payment methods by the players in Russia, in your experience?
Well, speaking about the payment methods, I would say that they're really interested for PC and for social networks, like projects that are running on the web that require their own mobile, that require their own payment method. There is really a bunch of them. I'm pretty sure that they might be also be on the vendors list on the link that I have there as a payment systems. There's quite a bunch of them, so yeah, you can use whatever you want. Also, they're not like the major ones that everyone's use. They're just like depending on the terms that you would communicate with these companies and the terms that they would give you, and yeah, just decide. They're all working quite well. Some of them were, I forgot the name. They were doing the payment methods for the World of Tanks. Forgot the name. I might follow up with a link or update the presentation.
Okay. Yeah. And in terms of the players themselves, does a Russian player add a credit card to his account, or does he choose to pay, I don't know, with some Yandex money, or from the side of the player himself? Do you see any trends in the payments?
Actually, everyone is using more or less credit cards. This is the most like everyone has their credit cards because they have their salaries got from there on this type. They use this type to get the salaries. Yeah, I'm out of English. Sorry. And more and more people are right now using mobile payments like Apple Pay, Google Pay, and other stuff. And yeah, they're not really keen on paying for fun and for digital goods like in-game currencies or something like this in huge, like in most of the people, right? But more or less, we do not have something like other countries do as a mobile payments first. We more or less used to the credit cards, debit cards, or something, because mobile payments, mobile operators, they use auto charge from the credit card as a main fund resource. And they're not really used as a wallets or something. So,
okay. All right. So thank you very much, Alisher, for this comprehensive talk. I think we managed to answer most of the questions.
Thanks for inviting.
Well, guys, I think you all see the contact details. And yes, his face also. So in the future, we will share with all of you the presentation. Maybe Alisher will update it with some information that we discussed today. So we'll be in touch. I think from our part as Apex Brazil office, we will continue this series of webinars with other speakers, because the gaming market is so huge, and you have so many questions, and you are curious. We are curious also, because we are learning learning with you. So let's stay in touch. I'm always available for questions. You can ask Alisher
Yeah,
directly.
you can contact me directly on LinkedIn, and the QR code has all my contact numbers. So just give me a note, drop me a note.
Yeah. Thanks to our partners in other games, I think the cooperation has been wonderful as always. We really it's a pity that the GDC didn't happen this time, because there have been 50 studios that should have gone there, and our friends in Brazil are a little bit frustrated about this. So we'll try to cheer you up with our input as much as we can. So please stay with us, and let's keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.